I am just slightly concerned that finances for this month may prove a little bit more taxing than usual, not just because of the spend on Camera 6, but also because of the heat wave. Do you know, one thing I've noticed is that because I get so exhausted with this heat, I get very vulnerable in the way that I'm feeling. My psychology is not brilliant, and because I have no motivation, I am less austere at steering away from the sort of temptations where I might spend too much money rather than keeping to budget. Keeping to budget isn't an easy thing, and it does require a lot of willpower, and that's what goes out of the window. We do have another week, at least, of this heat wave. And of course, we'll have to see. We'll just have to see what happens. But there is a concern in the back of my mind that it may not be as good as it could or should be. Apart from that, there isn't much to report for this week. The first fruits of the harvest from our inherited stock at the plantation have occurred, and we are enjoying eating our gooseberries and our strawberries in the knowledge that the rhubarb, red currants and the potatoes will follow, if Pesky the blackbird doesn't get there first, of course. One of the juvenile chicks has been named. The only surviving member of Beryl's first clutch has opened the house of Martin. We're calling it Binky. We can do that because Binky, you know, it's not really a gender-orientated name, is it? And I have to say I don't know what gender it is yet, but it certainly does. It's very funny to watch, because the poor bird has very, very little. It's the first time I've ever seen a bird with bad physical coordination. But there we are. I have no plans on sending Binky to market at all. Binky is definitely one that I'm keeping. He or she is definitely mine. The only other thing is that we've had a break, obviously, from the UFC predictions, but they are beginning again, so look out for my prediction video, because that will be up. About this time 10 years ago, I had finished university. University years don't quite extend as far as the proper academic year. Academic years are only 11 months long. They begin on the 5th of September and they end on the 25th of July, leaving a month and 10 days between them. You'll have to excuse me. And so I would already been, off from university. In fact, I would probably have graduated as well. Been back to graduate, I think, by now. Do you know, the first time that depression was mentioned in my my record, in my journal, is in 1999. The winter already affected me at that point in time. I think this is the first example of depression affecting me during a period of, stable, when seasonal affective disorder couldn't really account for the feelings. At this point, the depression that I was suffering from was not really reactive. It wasn't reactive to the symptoms, because I hadn't been depressed when I had the symptoms. I had been frightened and anxious, but not really depressed. And of course, at this point in that saga, I was no longer experiencing those symptoms. They were kept under control with the prochlorperazine, and I was told that they were all in my head anyway, and that it would just, all go away. There was nothing wrong with me. And yet, my mental state was very, very different to usual and to what a normal person's is. Do you know there's actually different states? There are different states that you can be in, and somebody in a depression is in a different. If it's a clinical depression, and there's a difference between depressive phases, which you would say, accounted for the seasonal affective disorder, and clinical depression, which is where even if it's reactive, you can't necessarily expect the depression to vanish even if you remove the stimulus that started it, because it's actually moved from being a feeling to being a chemical imbalance, and it's as much physiologically going on in the head as it is mentally. I don't know, really, I still don't know why I would have been depressed at that point in time, but I think I was. And because of that, I was hyper aware of everything that was going on. I'm sorry, there's a maybug batting its way, trying to get out of the Markenfield window, which I'll have to put out in a moment. Oh no, it's a butterfly. I'll have to get him out in a moment. But do you know, I've lost my train of thought now. Oh yes, depression. So part of the problem was that I'd left university, and at university I had quite a support network. That may have only been one person, really. Martin Brown, who pretty much took care of me, and I still think prevented what came later from happening first time round, if that makes sense, from stopping those symptoms causing a proper, reactive depression. I still think that I would have cracked up completely in that last semester if it hadn't been for the help and support that I got from him. I really, really do. So I owe him quite a lot for that. But of course, we'd finished university now. We'd left that. I was back at home. I was here, back at Harrogate, living with my parents, and I was sort of nervous and edgy because it was just unusual for me to be, on my own. It was a lack of confidence that everything was going to be okay. I was sort of walking on eggshells, hoping that the problems that I'd had wouldn't come back. And the way I sort of solved this all was by putting in a schedule, a routine. It's kind of like agoraphobia, except not being frightened by huge space, but being frightened by having a huge amount of time in which you've got nothing to do. And so I would get up with my mother early in the morning when I didn't need to. On her way to work, she would drop me off outside the Odeon Cinema. I would walk across Station Bridge, and I would visit my favourite cafe, which was Indulge. It's still there, although I haven't been to it in years. But I used that. Every day began with, a tea and I can't remember what it was, some sort of various sandwich or breakfast or whatever it was at Indulge. And then I would go and fill my time by doing voluntary work at all sorts of shops. I did cancer research, I did arthritis care, I did Save the Children, and I did them all at the same time. Well, not all, obviously all at the same time, but I would do one on a Tuesday, one on a Wednesday, one on a Thursday. And Monday and Friday I'd do something else, so it would be days that I had off. It occupied my time. Mondays and Fridays were dedicated to something else, which is what we will be looking at at a later date, one of these series in August. My parents said that I didn't want to miss anything. If somebody turned over in the bedroom next to where I was, I would wake up, spring out of bed, and wonder what was going on. I was sort of hyper aware, and it was a bizarre place to be, a really bizarre place to be. That's a place I don't particularly want to visit ever again. But that was what I was doing, and I am pleased to say that by the time it took me, I don't know when we broke up, maybe late May, so by August I was away from the depression and able to start to analyse my life in an objective place, which meant I had basically recovered my sanity, I suppose you could say. I was structured, I was organised, and I was well enough to, in fact, visit the problems that I'd had in the last couple of months and already try and dissect what was going on. And I did that myself in 2 months. So it is possible to fight these things without medication. But I had a lot of time, I was able to do what I want, I was able to take it at my own pace, and that's something that in the modern working world with commitments, and financial issues, you just can't do.